Welcome to Moving Iron with Casey Seymour and Greg Peterson, the podcast for anyone and everyone involved and interested in the business of ag equipment. If you want to understand what trends and market forces are impacting the price of your iron, you've come to the right place. Buckle up, it's time to move some iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. This is the Moving Iron Podcast. Is brought to you by John Deere. I've got Greg Machinery Pete Peterson on to talk about what's happening in the world of equipment, auctions, and whatnot. Greg, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing well, Casey. How about you?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right. You've been well traveled this week.
Yeah, I just got home late last night. I was in West Central Iowa. We were filming a nice farm auction for the TV show yesterday. So that would have been Monday, August 11th. It was by Brock Auction. It's great to catch up with Bruce Brock and his team there. It was an estate sale. Interesting one. I haven't seen too many farm auctions with four nice versatile tractors. So talking to Charlene Widman, widow of Chuck Widman, who passed in his early 70s a while back, and great family. It was super fun. She sort of mentioned she and Chuck got started, married young, and got started farming in the kind of early mid 70s, I think. And then by the early 80s, they kind of, like a lot of folks, ran aground and had an auction and kind of were able to kind of restart. And they had been green equipment before, and I was kind of asking Charlene, this is really cool. I don't see many sales with all the versatile equipment. And they had a particular dealer up the road, S&S. I met the principal there, Tim. I forget Tim's last name. Great guy, though. And anyway, Charlene was saying, yeah, when we restarted, we were trying to hold our costs down. So we maybe switched colors there, but it was a good day at the sale.
Anything stand out there that would point to some of the stuff we've been talking about as far as demand, or did you see some pricing there that jumped out at you?
Yeah, a couple things, Casey. I think the buy of the day was the combine. I've been saying for a while, kind of that 3 to 7 year old range. We saw it a decade ago. We've talked about it a lot, but there's still inventory on the lots, and there's such pressure on the grain farmers. But they had it was a 22 model New Holland CR780. Now, I had not seen a CR780 hit the auction block. Kind of a smaller class there, but it was a very nice machine, 481 engine hours. Now, it brought 190,000 on the auction. One of the comparables I was looking at going in, again, because I didn't have any auction comparables, I did see one for sale listed by a dealer in machinerypete.com, and that was a lower houred machine and 1 year new or 1 year older. It was a 21 model, like only 215 engine hours on it, but they were asking 375. So, a few less hours, but then this one with 481 hours goes for basically just over half of a retail asking price, which kind of reminded me back of 14 and 15, especially early to mid 15, a decade ago. We have, our Machinery Pete ratio where we take the average auction price divided by the average dealer ad price. And on late model combines, it kind of got down to under that 55% ratio, that's what you'd have been looking at yesterday. Now, how many New Holland combines are there in West Central Iowa? Things like that can affect sometimes what it sells for locally. But the tractors I thought did well. The four versatiles, I know there was the latest model one was a 20 model 315, 573 hours. That brought, I think it was 136. It was funny because we had it as the feature of our show, and the dude bought it, and boom, it was off the lot. We were still filming the other stuff, and we went back to put a bow on the filming, and it was gone. So then when I left the sale, I'm going down I-20 or Highway 20, Avenue of the Saints there, heading back towards I-35, and I passed it. So the guy, he was getting busy. He's putting that baby to work right away.
Ready to go to work, right? Ready to go to work.
That sold well. I think another example would be like the 2009 Versatile 305, 3,044 hours. So, it's pre-def, 4-wheel drive. That brought $91,000. And I think, again, the highest I'd ever seen auction on a 305 with over 3,000 hours was 97 and a quarter. Back more towards the top of the market, back in December of 23, right before it started to kind of turn. So at 91,000, a good pre-def 4-wheel drive did real well there. So again, the same trends we've been kind of seeing. Was a lot of chatter. just commodities, what they're doing, it's tough. So it's but the good used stuff with a little age on it still, I think, is performing really well.
Yeah. So something we talk about here. This is the time of year when you start looking at some higher end hay equipment. I guess kind of starts getting to get a little look at it. And reason for that is we're coming to the end of the season, and especially on the alfalfa side, where I'm at, we've got 3 or 4 cuttings a year if you're like ultra lucky, and all the stars align, and the planets go along with it, and you might get a 5th, but it's typically 3 to 4. And when you're looking at that, this is the time of year where guys are going like, okay, so I need to update my big square baler, look at my windrower, look at my raking tractors, rakes, and those kind of things. As you're looking at the market right now, you seeing any real peak up in hay equipment out there?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I just posted something an auction, I believe, which is coming up in just the next day or two with a number of 23 and 4 model. I know there was a Massey, self-propelled disc bind with hardly any hours on it. There was a 24 model round baler that looked like it hardly been used. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. I think what I've been seeing price-wise, just solid. I think back to an auction we covered in outside of Bismarck, North Dakota, a few weeks ago by Ulmer Auctions that had some really nice Vermeer. It had, I think, a 605N, I forget what they call that, like a cornstalk special. It's a 24 model. It was a little over 50,000, 51,000. I thought hard cash, that did really well. Right next to it was one of those cool self-propelled Vermeer ZR5 from hundreds. And I can't remember the number of hours, but I think it was 140. I filmed it. We got it out on YouTube. But I didn't think it would quite get that high based on the other ZR5 1200s that I'd seen. So, that was on a good livestock sale. And that sale really outperformed across the board. So hay equipment in general has been doing pretty well, I think.
Yeah. From what I can tell, you look at where, and it's indicative of where we're at in the marketplace, right? So you're looking at that $50,000 to $150,000 something. That's like the peak thing right now. And if you look at the cattle side of the business, there's a lot of cash out there right now, and a lot of things moving. That being said, the cattle market side of it too is, from what I've gathered and what I can see, is there's a lot of buying down of debt right now, and they're paying off a lot of debt. So that's, you and I've talked about this earlier this year, but the lag in loader tractors to where they're at today, right? If it seemed like I talked to a lot of friends of mine that are in the dealer side of the business, and they were like, man, we can't hardly get anyone to nibble on a 150 horsepower loader tractor, 175 horsepower loader tractor. And then you see where they're at today, and that market's really kind of flipped to where now that's a very sought after unit, whether we're talking about the dealer side or the auction side.
Yeah, for sure. On the auction side, just rock solid, good used loader tractors, whatever color. I know, I don't know if it was last week we talked about it. There was a 6R Deere, really nice, that set a record, like a year old. And of course you expect a 1-year-old unit to, sell for decent money at auction. But again, when they go over what we've seen before for comparables, that's indicative of a market that's kind of bumping. Versus we don't, and you nailed it on that dollar range, that 50 to 100. I think that's pretty accurate right now. Whatever. So, for example, that New Holland combine I watched yesterday, that technically I was guessing it should be 200 to 210, 215, but it brought 190. But you're butting up against you're getting quite a ways from that $100,000 mark. So that's what happens sometimes, and I've seen that for 35 years. So, and again, like we talked about, I'm just sort of watching to see on the dealer side volume of units that might flow into the auction side or not, because there was definitely a pause button that was hit the first half of the year, I think, and you hit the armchair quarterback around the edge of football season here. Oh, they should have ran a draw. They should have whatever. One of the things starting in about February or March, I just started wondering, I wonder if there's going to be some dealers that wish they would have sold in the first or end of the first quarter, early second quarter, which is maybe not when they're looking to do that, but the market was receptive. and we'll see how it holds the rest of the summer here.
Yep. Yeah, and I think if you look at where things are tracking, you're starting to see the sell bills are starting to come out. You're starting to see a lot more activity on the auction side. Um, not crazy this time of the year. I mean, if you go back and look at the last couple of years, this time of the year was a really hot time to get some stuff in the auction market. So that's really really diminished quite a bit. But I think I think you're right there. You hit on something where what's that last quarter of the year look like? And I think we are pointing towards a situation where there is going to be an uptick in that November December timeframe. I think you're going to see a lot of auctions get booked here in September October timeframe for that November December timeframe, and maybe some stuff just stuff guys aren't even thinking about right now. And it might not be. I'm not saying they're going to go out and sell 40 combines in one day type of thing, but a lot of like little rough edges are going to try to get smoothed out.
Yeah, I think so. I think, your Moving Iron Summit, your great event you started over a decade ago, Casey, coming up. Well, that's end of September?
Yeah.
I forget the dates, but
25th, yep.
I think, though, you're right. There's going to be a lot of discussion there. Used equipment managers looking ahead to that fourth quarter. And, of course, Q4 has been an optimal time, November, December, the last, since 2003 or 4, basically, Bush tax cuts so far ago. But, last year was only the second year I saw it dip in the fourth quarter, and the only reason it dipped was really that sheer volume. So, that's why steering clear of when everybody else is selling. Now, of course, if you flip that, if you're on the buying side, it doesn't change the fact we've been talking about. It's, someone got great value on that. I mean, it was a 3-year-old at CR 780 yesterday. Someone walked out of there $190,000 and got themselves one hell of a combine. So, even though dollars are tight, situationally, oh man, be aggressive. Now on the combine side, one thing I would share, Casey, and this again confirmed a trend we've been talking about, but last Friday out in the great state of Ohio, my friend Darby Walton, I think you might know Darby, United Country Walton Auction and Realty, nice little farm sale, 2006 Case H 2388. I mean, it looked like it was new, but it had 2,306 engine hours on it. But Darby he's a very smart cat. His dad Doug and his late grandpa Jay were the same. Darby did a video interview with the owner, farmer, just talking about it and his history of care. You could see the farmer. This was his baby. And it brought $120,000 with no heads on the sale Friday for 06 2388. So of course I do my thing. I look back at machine repeat data. It's the highest auction price on the 2388 since April of 15. Now that same result happens literally 3 days before I see a 3-year-old, and not pick on New Holland. That could have been, anything, but that's what I mean. The 3 to 7-year-old combines, and same would apply with tractors. That's where the value buy is right now. And the pre-def stuff is just, it's almost escalating. More people want that. And then you get, a lot of people thought that 2380, 2360 or 2388 would, I don't know, 50, 60, 70, 80,000 goes for 120 because you got 5 guys that had to have it. And that's what happens at an auction.
Yep, that's exactly right. If you'd have said bet your house on what that thing sells for, I'd have been $50,000 to $60,000 all day long.
Yeah. The comments. If you want to have fun, folks, go look, navigate back to Machine Repeat Facebook page and just surf back a little bit, and the number of comments on that post. I knew it was selling Friday, so it was Friday by dinner time. I was like, shoot, I wonder how that sold. And I looked, and I was, man, 120. So I knew what happened. It's just the fact. You put it out there. Same deal. A lot of people say that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Well, God bless you. That's your opinion. Opinions are free. Other people are like, hey, what's a new one cost? That was my favorite model combine. I'll never find another one this nice.
Yeah.
I see it every single auction I go to. The one other thing that was confirmed, I actually threw a note on this when I was at the sale yesterday in Bronson, Iowa. Beautiful rolling country, but I was filming and a guy walks by with a dog, and I was like, dang, I think every single auction I've been to, there's been someone with a dog. Every single auction. And so I had to take a picture and post a little video. But man's best friend, even faithful out at the auction, advising you on whether you should bid again or not, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, Saw you had a pretty good post the other day. You posted where you were talking to two dads, and you had the three boys there and their toy tractors out in the field.
Oh, you caught that one? I was
Caught that
hoping
one,
you'd.
yeah, yeah. Talk
That
about that
one,
a little bit, yeah.
that was hilarious. So now I'm a grandpa. We have a 2-year-old grandson, Julian. And this guy came up to me at the sale. And again, the fun of going out, and Casey, at events you go to as well. I mean, yeah, it's fun to stand there and watch a Kinsey 20 model 1631 planter sell. Oh, was it high? Was it low? That's cool. It's been a joy to compile that stuff, but it's the people. So this guy comes up. His name was Brian Volkert, and his son, one of his sons, Anthony, was there. Big, tall guy. And Brian is a proud father and grandpa. And he goes, Pete, I got to show you something. So he takes his phone and he shows me that picture of the three young boys in a field on pedal tractors. And then he's just telling me about it. And he said, yeah, their names are, it was Ferguson, Oliver, and Heston. And then he kept talking. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. What did you say? And he rattles the names again. And I'm like, show me that picture. And I was like, and I talked to Anthony. He's like, yeah, it's cool if you share it. So I think they were from Correctionville, Iowa, just down I-20 there. Nice people. And I told Anthony, I think he said his wife's name was Lexi, and I said, God bless your wife, Lexi, for being cool with those three names of those boys, Ferguson, Oliver, and Heston. Now, they had the pedal tractors. They were trying to get a tractor for each of them. They have the Ferguson and the Oliver. They're looking for a Heston. And I was like, oh, like an 1880 DT or something? And he goes, yep. I said, you got to be patient. You'll find it. They don't show up every day. And it's just like, when you get that, you call me. But that picture's so good, I think we got to share it on the TV show. That was fun.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was a coincidence that was Ferguson, Oliver, and Heston, or if it was just that's what they actually sought after.
Oh,
so
they're passionate farmers.
Yep.
And it was funny in the thread. I could tell there was another farm family. I don't know where they were, but they had obviously maybe named their kids after their favorite whatever. But Heston was the one that really got me. Obviously, Oliver is like, when our daughter, they were going through the process of naming what would be our grandson, Oliver was one of the names. They didn't go with it, but I read that's like a top 5 boy name now.
Okay.
So, and then of course, Ferguson is unusual, but Heston, and I thought, Heston, that's actually a great name, Heston. And we'll see the little guy when he grows up. Hopefully he won't get teased. I'd be super proud of it. There ain't nobody else named Heston in my class. So
I've never known anyone named Heston. So yeah.
Yeah, there aren't too many Gregs there's probably some young kids being named Casey, so you're probably covered. But Gregs and Steves and Garys and Bobs, not too many of us anymore. We're dinosaurs.
That all comes back. What's old now becomes new, right? So you'll be back.
That's sad. The name Greg will be like a vintage name, but I think you're right.
Well, Oliver is that's a good example of that. I mean,
yeah,
50 years ago that was a popular name, and now it's making its way
right.
back.
My wife, one of her grandfathers was named Oliver. He passed 2 months short of his 100th birthday a few years ago, and I don't know if I've ever met a more hardworking dude than Oliver Groff, my wife's grandpa. He was just a salt of the earth guy, and yeah, Oliver's a great name.
Yeah. Next thing you have to find someone that named their kids after planter parts. You got Groff and all the stuff that come in there.
There you go. Well, again, the commitment, and it just made me smile. Ferguson and Heston, and but if you think about it, and actually the farm family yesterday was that we interviewed, the Widman family, was a perfect example. So you farm your whole career, and Charlene lost her husband Chuck. He passed suddenly. And by the way, she told me that the morning or the day he passed, I think it was a Sunday, they had driven home from church, and they had got looking and were kind of reflecting on their career. They'd been able to rebound from losing their farm in the 80s and hung in there and clawed their way. And she said they kind of looked at each other like, boy, how did we get so lucky? And they weren't, full of pride, like, look what we did. It was more like, oh, we were so fortunate and thankful. And Charlene, when we were interviewing her, God bless her, and it's tough, she lost her husband, and she was great talking about their life together, and I tread lightly, but she was great. And I can't even remember the one particular question I asked. I think I asked her what advice you would have to young farm couples setting sail. And there's a lot of pressure now. I mean, particularly if you haven't built up a real strong balance sheet yet, now corn and beans, and it's tough. So her answer hit me, and I was teared up. And I said, Charlene, that is the best answer on any interview I've ever had. So that'll be coming up on Machinery Pete TV. And but with the people, when you pour your life into something, and then these machines that we talk about, for example, one of those versatile tractors, she was saying, oh, Chuck and I, we farm, the low ground is very hilly, and we got stuck 3 a.m, and we called their versatile dealer up the road with S&S. I think his name was Tim, and Tim's there at 3:30 in the morning to pull him out of the muck and take care of the machine to keep him running. And that's what when I was a kid growing up, and my dad was a dealer, and I mean, small town, nobody had any money in the 80s, but you just help each other. And to be able to talk to people about that. And then again, when Brian came up, and as a grandpa, I was like, Pete, let me show you my grandsons. And you tie in the equipment brands, it's woven into us in such a way that if you're not in agriculture, you can't understand it.
Right.
But if you are, people nod their head and they go, those are 3 great boy names: Heston, Ferguson, and Oliver.
Yeah, it's agriculture is as much a career as it is a lifestyle, and that's the thing that a lot of people miss. So,
right.
Yep. All right, Greg, good place to stop there. Folks want you to come speak at their event. Easiest way, just go to machinerypete.com, check the contact page, and get you there.
Yep, our phone number's there. Email goes into our office. You can give me a note. I'll be out Tuesday in Valparaiso, Indiana, with Keystone Cooperative, great co-op there, speaking. Love doing that stuff. We got some other auctions coming up. So, again, just very appreciative of folks that watch Moving Iron Podcast and the different stuff we do. It's been a ton of fun.
You going to give your 2 cents on the energy market when you're giving your talk in Valparaiso?
No, we need to pipe you in to talk about that. Energy markets. Well, yeah, I don't. Well, it gets pretty interesting. You get into politics and solar and all that stuff. I don't know, but I did see a nice auction up around Williston. Our friends at Steffes Group had a while back, and those prices look good on the used equipment up there. But no, Machinery Pete does not have game on energy. I will leave that topic to the experts.
Yeah, me too. So, well, Greg, appreciate you being on. We're going to be together August 21st, 2 weeks, up in your hometown up there. We're going to be doing at the Yield Academy after the Pro Farmer Farm Tour, and you're going to see the results there. And then Greg and I will have a little Q&A session where we can talk about what's going on in the marketplace and kind of give our 2 cents there. So if you're in the area, I'd love to have you stop by and talk about what's going on.
Yeah, come on out Thursday, August 21st, Rochester, Minnesota, folks. We'll talk machinery, and it's going to be a fun day.
That's right. We're going to it's our first tour stop. Then we're going to go on from there. And then
you have a long drive to come up to Minnesota. I hope
do.
we get good weather, but
yeah.
Safe travels, Casey, and looking forward to you coming up to Minnesota next week.
Right on. If you're interested in coming to the Moving Iron Summit, that is September 24th through the 26th, Austin, Texas. If you're a dealer, want to check that out. Great place to network and see what's going on there. So with that, we'll catch you again next week, Greg.
Yeah, come join us in Texas at the.
There you go.
I guess it's Austin. Hey,
UT. Austin, yeah.
There you go.
You'll be right there where you need to be at. All right, man.
Nice folks in Texas. All right. See you.
Take care, buddy.
Well, there they are, mocking you.
See you next year, loser.
That weedy area that's got you thinking, man, I hate that spot. Wish I'd sprayed better. Get the last laugh with a sprayer upgrade from John Deere. Precision upgrades that can increase your sprayer's performance, like ExactApply, advanced nozzles to give you more control at more speeds. It's just one of the many precision upgrades you'll find at johndeere.com. Now, let's see who's laughing.
All right, welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast. I got Rich Possum back on the podcast to talk about what's happening in the world of economics. I'd like to have Rich on once a month to kind of give us an update what's happening there. And this morning we had a inflation report come out, talk about what's going on there, and we had a Federal Reserve meeting take place a week or two ago, and last week, and they held interest rates, but everything I hear, they're gonna just start slashing away the next 4 to 5 meetings that you see coming up. So we'll see what happens there. But before we get into that, Rich, talk about your podcast and where people can find that.
Yes, go to criticalpointpod.com and you'll see a podcast button there. You'll also see, if you scroll down the homepage, you have to scroll down quite a ways, but there'll be a list of podcasts, some of the free stuff especially. Also click on the blog and you'll find I blog occasionally. What's more important there is, as of yesterday, I put out a free monthly newsletter on everything I get into society, culture, politics, climate, but also markets and grains and economy. But anyways, the August issue was just put up there. I also put it out on LinkedIn. And then I put out a few tweets and Blue Sky and to remind people where to go find it. But check it out. I give a 60-day free trial under, much unlike everybody else. I mean, even I used to have it just a 2-week trial. But when I designed this website brand new, I said, you know what? I'm going to be unlike everybody else, 60 days. And my guess is after 60 days, you're going to say you want this for the rest of this decade, because we got a lot of wild, crazy things to go for the rest of this decade. And hopefully we're going to make the best of it. It has worked well for me for 40 years in the commodities and stock market and economy. So go to that. And I'm still on Twitter, barely so. I'd kind of like to move more over to Blue Sky, but I'm at Rich_Posson. And you can also look me up under Blue Sky. I forget the actual tag there. But and then I'm also on LinkedIn. So
right on. Well, Rich, let's dive into this. So let's talk a little about what you want to start with. You want to start with the report that came out this morning?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have the CPI inflation report. That's very important to Wall Street, anybody, everybody. Not so important for the Federal Reserve. They prefer the PCE inflation report. It'll come out at the end of the month. But they're very similar. They're at different levels, but they do pretty much the same thing. The CPI come out at 2.7% this morning, annualized. And that was shocking to Wall Street. First, they bought, then sold. Now they're back to buying today under the idea that, hey, it's lower than what we thought. Therefore, sooner or later, lower interest rates are coming. Everything's rosy, even though we have to deal with Trump and the tariffs and all the other geopolitical stuff going on in the world. Everything's great, okay? So they're back to buying the stock market here at midday. But the 2.7% was actually unchanged. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but for years ago, I learned from watching USDA data that when a government gives you an unchanged number from the prior monthly report, it basically means they don't know what to do next, okay? So and they're giving you a clue of that without saying anything, right? And yet these people on Wall Street are all excited. Oh, this is great. Because why? They were expecting 3%. They were expecting, I think it was 2.7 the prior month. They were expecting to jump all the way to 3%. Not a good sign. So they were getting nervous. And now they're back being happy. Well, the problem is Wall Street's now finally catching on, saying, can we really trust the government data anymore with all the politics intertwined and what Trump's doing? He's firing people and replacing analysts, like the jobs report, which we might want to talk about. That was crazy. And he fired the person for basically revising the data. So even in my modeling now, for the first time in my career, 40 years of trading live with my own money, other people's money, and being hired by big companies and this and that, I'm actually downplaying some of the government data here, a little concerned. How much can we really trust it? But it came in 2.7%. Core came in at 3.1%. That's normal to be a little high right now. Okay, and core just takes out some of the things that can make it more volatile, crazy, like food, energy, and this and that. Gets down to the other stuff. But it looks like those trends are starting to turn. And I've said for quite some time, if we get 3% or higher, not a good sign. Now that I know Wall Street's also watching 3, I want to be a little bit different. So I wanted to see it above 3%. Then I'll say that's not a good sign. And my forecast modeling wise, using business cycles, the economy, but also even using the stock market to give us clues of the economy, as well as commodities. I'm coming up with a forecast that we're probably got higher inflation in the next year. And I think the tariffs will speed that inflation higher. but it's been a delay. It's really puzzled quite a few people, including myself, how long it's taking to work through the data. But this morning I got thinking about it. In 2022, when we had the high inflation, we were all forecasting, well, it should drop in this next month's report. They wouldn't drop it as much or even put it up for a while. And it was just much slower than we thought for them to catch up to what we said all along. Well, I'm now thinking, gee, that's probably what's going on now, that it really hasn't caught up, So I do think we've got higher inflation, and it goes over 3%. As far as I'm concerned, it ought to head to 4, and at 4, nobody's going to like that, all right? And the Fed Reserve should be at least preparing at the time to raise interest rates. But right this morning, 2.7%, stock market saying, hey, we're just going to take it the way it is, which is what we do with USDA data. Well, we don't believe it, but we're going to treat it, okay?
Right.
And so everybody's happy-dappy right the moment the stock market and interest rates are kind of stable. And I guess I don't have much else to add on that inflation. It's just, it just concerns me, these tariffs. It's costing people more. That's all there is to it. I can see the actual numbers. I'm buying stuff and I can't get it because they're saying, well, if you want to pay twice the price, we'll get it to you. And I'm saying, no, forget it. So there's complications coming. So
Yep, for sure. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about interest rates. So last week you talked about here, you just said, they've kept it where, in play for where it's at right now. If I've read one article, I've read 10 that say, look for something in September where they drop rates, and they're going to do it 4 more times after that. What's your feel on that, Rich?
Well, they said that in July or in June and May, April, whatever.
Right.
I must, on one hand, I look at some of these economic indicators. I look at the pressure by Trump on the Fed Reserve, and boy, there's some people scared that even think they like Powell, they like the Fed, and they're saying Powell should actually retire or resign just to save the system because they're scared that if he's shoved out, then the Trump people will do even more of tying the Fed Reserve to the Treasury when they ought to be separate, even though the Fed is still kind of government anyways. But that could make things worse in the sense of controlling it the way they want and mess with our money printing machine, which, by the way, if they wreck our money printing machine, it's going to hurt. This country's going down for the count, okay? But if we leave the money printing machine away, that federal debt doesn't scare me at all, okay? It's not real debt. That is how they record money printing. It is IOUs, so they show it as debt because the people that designed this country for the accounting side were basically accountants, business people. And they felt like, well, you got to have a checkbook, you got to have a balance. And that checkbook thing doesn't apply to the actual printed money by a government, okay? Not by someone else, but just by a government. But nevertheless, it's up there, still scares people, unfortunately, and causing some of the problems here. But we just have to be concerned that anybody messes with that money printing system. When Musk finally discovered it, saying there's computers there just printing money, I thought, oh boy, he's going to screw up the programming and the system's going down. Well, he left it alone. Okay. I think maybe he said, gee, this could be serious. All right. But anyways, to get aside from that type of a discussion, I would say that what we're locked into here with these interest rates is that they've been stable because the Treasury, or I should say Federal Reserve, more likely, has printed money all along. And in April, I woke up to it. The model woke up to it. Wall Street started waking up to it. And they were printing money prior months. But it just got to a level that you could see there's an uptrend here. They're not letting up. And I thought, well, here's Trump complaining they're not helping out enough, but he was really helping out, and perhaps the more important way, of printing the money. And that's what's unfortunately prodding this stock market up. That's really kind of high price. It's kind of ahead of our economy here a bit. But it is propping things up and it is helping keep the economy going. And I just realized I want to tell you a little story of what I learned on economy, a little tour. We can talk about that a little later. But at any rate, they printed the money, but Trump wants the interest rate down as well to make things better. That would kind of complete the full stimulation. Well, I don't know as we need to stimulate the economy. It's running about 2.5%, which is about where it finished for Biden. So Trump hasn't added to it, but he really hasn't taken anything off, even though his jobs performance doesn't look good. But the economy's hanging in there, right? So I question whether we need to lower interest rates. I would personally like to wait on lowering interest rates, get more data, see more on inflation. And Powell does seem to be more patient than some of the others. The board's kind of split there a little bit. Some of them want to lower, some want to raise. So the trade's guessing with this inflation today, they're back to saying, yep, cuts in September and later. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised Powell tries to get by one more time here. And they're going to have the Jackson Hole. Shouldn't they be doing that now, actually? So they probably won't. They probably won't do anything officially till September meeting. And I don't know. They may actually lower it. I don't know as I would, because I'm concerned of getting a trap next year with higher inflation. They'll have to raise it again. And history shows over the past 50 years, they've done that twice, I think, where they started lowering and then said, oops, and they had to put it back up. And maybe that doesn't bother. Maybe that doesn't matter at the moment anyways, but it is something to think about and look about. To me, if I'm right on the interest rates or inflation moving higher into next year, we're probably going to be right that the model is saying interest rates ought to pick up some into next year, but could surge by next year just because of surging inflation. So in other words, we don't know how to gauge and forecast how high inflation right now. We just know the trend should be up now. And the same for interest rates, and we don't know for sure how high it goes. All I can tell you, if it goes to 5%, as far as I'm concerned, it might as well go to 6. Well, I can tell you Wall Street isn't going to like 5 or 6. So there could be some issues when it does that, all right? I do think there's a group out there on Wall Street, though. They're trying to convince themselves even 5% interest doesn't matter, and 3 to almost up to 4% inflation doesn't matter. And they might be a bit right on that, but I'm just surprised how brave they are and still buying the stock market with the idea that none of this tariff stuff, Trump stuff even matters. Everybody's still, the companies are doing great. Well, really, 80% of the stock market is not doing good at all. It's not doing bad, but it's just not doing much of anything. And 20% is doing good, and then only about 1 or 2% is like the Mag 7 stocks and NVIDIA. They're doing fantastic. And they're like propping up the whole stock market. And somebody said this AI capex, meaning the amount of money invested by these companies in AI, it's about the only thing holding up the entire economy right now. So there's some reasons to be scared here. And my model even favors stock market should be lower in August, September, October. There's also people that believe every September, October, the market's down. They can be, on average, for the history of this country, the worst performing months. November, December, interesting enough, are the best performing months. Some of them are backing off this year, interesting enough. They say we beat it up so much earlier in the year, maybe the seasonal doesn't work that well. But my model's leaning towards there probably will be some selling here in the next few weeks, several weeks in the stock market. And it may not be a huge amount. It may be huge. It's all over the map. Just depends how the data comes out, what Trump does. But I'm thinking a setback here. But I think after that, the stock market can go higher and the economy can go higher. We just have to watch out that inflation's going to go higher too, and interest rates are going to go higher too. And it just seems like Wall Street's got this attitude, well, so what if it goes higher? The middle class and poor, they have to spend money at the store. Too bad. Okay. So it's like they're not really thinking this thing clearly. It's like a little too much greed here. I'm kind of reminded of Warren Buffett still sitting on records amount of cash. And, hey, he didn't get where he was for being a nimwit. So it's learned something over 50 or 60 years here. So even I have to keep looking over my shoulder for problems, but I must admit it's amazing how strong this stock market is hanging in there, even with 4 or 5% interest. And the mortgages have been up to 8. They're backing off now. Real estate's backing off or losing the demand. Prices just too high. They can't afford it. But amazing how long it took to just start backing off a little bit. There must be a lot of money in people's pockets. Somebody's got more money than I got. That's all I can say to keep paying these higher prices, just crazy. Anyway, my stance on interest rates is that I doubt Powell will lower in September, but he's going to be under increasing pressure for some time. And I must say, if the inflation number is lower, same or lower next month, he'll probably give in. I don't know why we'd lower interest rates until inflation goes all the way back to 2.5 or lower, actually. Why would you lower now at 2.7? That's not near the 2% target. So people, I think, are too greedy. It's almost, especially Wall Street bankers. They want a good time here. Let's rock and roll. And they want the best scenario of lower interest rates. They don't seem to care what happens to the country by doing that. And it's just a scary. Some of these people I talk to, I keep wondering, boy, I always thought you were kind of intelligent, but I'm not so sure anymore. What are you drinking?
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. You look at the stuff that's happening now and you take a look at where grains are, for example, and we're seeing some, 380 corn right now. From on 380 corn, we're seeing, under $10 beans, and we're seeing all these things here where the same conversations I have with folks are about, well, if we had trend line yield and demand stayed the same, we'd have a hard time keeping the balance sheet at where it's at now. Again, for next year, which you think that would start playing into some of the effects you see on corn. Cattle, same way. Cattle prices are, every time I think the cattle price is going to come back down, it just goes back up, and it just takes off and runs. A lot of that has to do with herd size and those kind of things. We're seeing that, but you're seeing some box beef pricing where there's some opportunities that are showing box beef is starting to kind of get a little shaky a little bit. Looking at commodities, where are you at on that, and what do you see happening there?
I just put it out in that Notes from a Napkin newsletter here that I put out yesterday, and again, it's on my website for free. I show a chart of Goldman Sachs commodity index. I think it's an equal weighted index, so it'd be a little more of the grains and metals and a little less energies. A lot of indexes, unfortunately, are energy oriented. And I am forecasting to move higher next year, 10% higher. It could do very well up to as much as 20% and compete very well with the stock market going into 2027. I don't know how accurate I'll be on terms of how high, but I'm feeling pretty confident it will work higher next year. I think we're trying to put in long-term bottoms. Now, inside of that, for the grains could be the leader of that if we get a crop problem next year and the following year. And I am looking at that Gleisberg cycle. I'm looking at some of my own models. It still allows for some kind of a crop problem. Mine says it might be minor to modest, but that Gleisberg would say it's going to be a disaster. So the model's playing it safe, saying, well, it can go up some and it can go up a huge amount. Let's not worry about how much. Let's worry more about finding that bottom, stay in tune, stay in line with it, with that developing trend. The model is showing that the grains can work higher even without a crop problem. It's showing from normal supply demand. So these balance sheet guys could have it right that it ought to move higher. Right at the moment, my model's not getting excited. It's not saying run out there and buy grains because of that. What it's saying is really that probably helps put a floor price on here very soon, okay? That it's more of, it doesn't need to go lower because of that balance sheet. It's not as bullish as some people say right now, but I fully get as we go into next year, if you can maintain that, now that offers some upside. Somebody's got to bid it up to try to keep it flowing down through the pipeline, right? So I like where that's going. I think it's rather limited. Not convinced we bottomed out. We're going to be watching some things next few months, at least for a little trader's bottom here. The model kind of helped us lately here of some of this lingering weakness of knowing down, gave us a little short-term sell signals along the way, kind of picked that up on the downside there. And but I will say, you mentioned 380 and it rung a bell with me. I have on my chart in my member service, I have a monthly chart, continuous going back many years. I actually have it back in the 1800s. I don't normally show that. But what I've learned from that is once a decade, you get a buy signal and corn goes up. One time from 1800 to now, one decade it went up 65%, another decade up 85%. All the other decades, 100 to 400%. Add them all up and average them out, it was 180% on average. So it's big. It's a big deal. It's the once a decade bull market. Well, the interesting thing is corn can put that bottom in now. Problem is corn doesn't have to do it for a few years yet. So we might get a fake out, pull it back yet again. Soybeans should not put that bottom in yet. I'm watching it to see how it may, but it's kind of warning me that can come down the road a little bit later. Some of this is kind of telling me the best bull market may not be to 2030. There's probably going to be a significant crop problem because they always related to crop problems. So that tells you get a once a decade, most important kind of crop problem. It really probably shouldn't occur to 2030, but the point is we can put a floor price in well ahead of that and start trading sideways and this and that and work our way higher and then finally explodes off of that big crop problem. So I did some research way back in the 2000s when I was trying to find a super cycle bottom in corn in 2005. It was December 2005. I was giving a speech at some big convention where they had 6,000 people visiting and all that. And I put my name on the line. I just says, it's bottoming now. It was in December 3rd or 5th or something like that. And it turned out to be the pretty correct call. That was the bottom. And I said, it's got to go to a record high no later than 2008. I thought it was going to screw me over. I thought, boy, if this doesn't work, I'm done. I'm finished. I've bet too much on this. And it worked. Okay. I got my record high and it worked out. Okay. But I did some research going back to 1930s, and I learned that if you can adjust corn for inflation, that back in 2005, I said, you know what, this stuff is cheap as the 1930s. It was 20 or 30 cents a bushel, and here we're getting, I forget what it was, 250 or something, and $2. And it worked as an additional study. Right today, they still show that chart, and it shows right around 430 to 380 as this dirt cheap price for corn. I think it's possibly going to dip a little below that because we have the September already below it, whereas my chart's using the December. That's okay because I can allow that lower and lower. All it's simply saying, yeah, it's getting even cheaper. It's even more out of line, getting even cheaper than the Great Depression. We don't have a Great Depression right now, and we're sensitive to inflation. So to me, it's just a warning, another indicator that these corn prices are cheap. Something's probably got to happen in the future and pull them back on. I was so proud of that chart last year because they put it to the bottom line. I was showing at 385, I think. And at least for the futures it was using, it went right to 385, took off and rallied up into this year. Now it's come all the way back down. It probably is going to go a little bit lower. But at any rate, I have to be skeptical of bears thinking much lower than this unless we really crash and burn the economy. I think that somehow the grains will sweat it out here on the import-export and the tariffs and this and that. So I got to find this kind of floor price. And I just got to be optimistic looking out into next year where we're going with a lot of these commodities. How good it'll be, I don't know yet. And obviously, if you're going to have a weather problem, then that makes it more exciting for us. And but I don't have a signal of that today. I'm just kind of watching the weather like everybody else.
Yep. I think last thing, Rich, is you're looking at energy. What do you see happening there? You got any, because the price of oil has just kind of been the same for the past 2 years. Kind of there's about a $5 to $7 range. It kind of flops back and forth in. We saw some geopolitical spikes in the price of oil, and you're seeing some natural gas here of late kind of jump up, driving up some fertilizer costs. But as you look at energy costs right now, or energy in general right now, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I have a chart similar to that corn I was just explaining of being like the 1930s. And the recent prices of 70s, 60s, that's getting dirt cheap even with the high supply. And it's interesting how the OPEC nations are doing their best to make sure it doesn't slip any below that. And the rest of the refiners, traders around the world, they're doing their best to not take it any lower. It may go lower because, again, that range is just a starting point that we know it's dirt cheap. I think in the next 3 to 5 months, we'll probably put in a minor long-term bottom in oil, and we'll see oil higher going into next summer. But if we maintain these supplies and it's feasible, we may not see that much of a big up move out of it. Okay, these long-term patterns, some of them move up a little, sometimes they move up huge amounts. It just depends on the variability of the fundamental, the actual supply and demand. But at least it tells us a moment of time when we can anticipate those fundamentals actually turning that way, an economy turning that way. And so I'm optimistic the oil price is well moving higher. But again, right at the moment, I don't want to tell people, oh, it's going up huge amounts, run out there. It may be a struggle all the way into next year, because at least right today, we have all the oil you would want.
Okay. All right, Rich, good stuff as usual. One more time with your podcast and where they can find that at.
Go to criticalpointpod.com. And like I say, on the left-hand side, you'll see a place to sign up. And, hey, sign up for 60 days. I'm convinced you do that. You'll say, hey, you need this for a long time to come. I have 3 different services. One is just for the grains, and one is for the stock market, Bitcoin, crude oil, the economy, gold, and the stock market, with an emphasis on stock market and economy. And then there's the third one is just a combination. You get the grains along with all the financial markets and the other commodities. And I give morning briefs, okay, of a few minutes, and I give alerts and warnings at times and little flash updates. But I do a weekly update. It can get kind of lengthy at times, but it explains everything from the very short term to the very long term. And you can also see that I put out the monthly newsletter called Notes from a Napkin. That's on there. There's also a blog that occasionally I'll put a little something on there. It's a brand new website for me and new subscriptions, and I'm quite pleased. It's working very, very well for me, and I'm getting some more foreigners actually having interest here. This morning, somebody from Saudi Arabia just signed up, see what we're up to. And I can also email me at rich@ag-financial.com if you have any comments and things to look into. Tell me what you're seeing in your world. And I'm still on Twitter, even though I don't do a whole lot there. And I do have Blue Sky, and I am on LinkedIn. Just look up Rich Posson. So,
Right on. Rich, appreciate you in the podcast. We'll catch you again next time.
thank you very much.
All right. Stay tuned for more Moving Iron podcasts after these messages.
Looking for more accuracy, more productivity from your current planter? Let's get exact with precision upgrades from John Deere. Start with Exact Emerge and get accurate singulation and spacing at 10 miles per hour. Or choose Exact Shot to promote early root growth and cut fertilizer costs. And with Furrow Vision, save time by verifying seed depth right from your cab. Visit johndeere.com/planner upgrades and see why nothing runs like a deer.
All right, welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast. Got Aaron Findle back on to talk about what's happening in the world of the farm equipment business. Aaron, how you doing today, bud?
I am terrific.
Awesome.
You know, I thought of something the other day when we got video on here.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of odd that this is no gray and this is all gray, the beard.
What's
And
because you?
I figured it out. I've been selling machinery for like 25 years, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So this right here would be like $1.70 corn in 2000 to 2003. This
Yeah.
side over here is 12 to 14 collapse. And
Okay.
then I did have like the middle, the goatee still had some black in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that was 23, 24.
Gotcha.
So here
Yeah.
we are. Merry Christmas, Santa.
So your top half of your head there is going to be what? Early 30s collapse.
Ooh, man, throw your crystal ball in the trash. Get a different one. Pick up that magic 8 ball again, man.
Highly likely. There it is. There it is. All right. We are right in the middle of, so fall harvest season is about to begin out here where we're at, right? And we have
Harvest is coming.
harvest is coming. We got about 4-5 crops, depending on how you count it, that we harvest every year about this time, right? You got last cut in alfalfa, you got sugar beets, edible beans, millet, and missing one. Which one am I missing?
Well, what certain parts, specifically on the high plains, in September, a lot of guys are swathing feed too.
There you go. That's
Millet
kinda-
hay, Sudex, a lot of that's starting to
Yep.
get right on the cusp right now
Well,
too.
then, yeah, forage. The forage
silage.
side. Yeah, silage. You got
How
the
can we
silage.
forget
I'm
silage?
thinking.
Both being chopper lovers that we are.
That was the one. That was my fifth one. Silage, silage, earlage, those kind of fun things, right?
And then, since you're taking everything off, one other thing goes in. You're also planting wheat.
You are planting wheat, Joe. Wheat. Yes, first that is sure. That is true. So
I mean, we're like at least a solid month from wheat, but it's
Right.
definitely time to
But it's-
look at the old drill and
Well, you think about it, a solid month from wheat. You know, here we are. The day is, what is today? The 12th of August.
right.
Right.
We're 11 days from college football.
11 days from college football, and a lot of stuff pops off Labor Day weekend.
Oh yeah.
If you think about it, I mean,
And
start looking at
that's-
a lot of stuff.
You know, that's the cool thing I noticed when I first got out here is, you know, that the old farmer rule of thumb stuff, right? Which is completely Greek when you're from 400 miles away. Be like, wow, you guys are planting beans? Dry, like northerns on June 1st? Oh, yeah. Beans are just Memorial Day to Labor Day. And you're like, huh? And you go, you know, next guy, oh, yeah, Memorial Day to Labor Day. And then, you know, you spend like 3 years and you're like, Memorial Day to Labor Day. Those exact weekends,
yeah,
plant combine. Like,
yeah,
here we go.
yep. That
Or
is,
excuse me, we'll go back in time 15 years. You plant Memorial Day weekend and you picket or undercut them on Labor Day weekend, shortly then after combine.
Yep. And there's a lot of that, all that stuff that goes on wherever you're at, and there's plenty of stuff happening. So I think one of the unique things, I mean, there's not that there's that many spots on the planet that grow sugar beets, but we're one of the 5 or 6 locations in North America that grow sugar beets. And Labor Day weekend is typically early dig, and that's more of a make sure that the factory is going to work like it's supposed to.
Right.
type of thing.
That's literally all it does.
More than they only dig as much as they can process in a day, and they don't let anything sit. Obviously, for two reasons: one, obviously, they got to make sure the plant's working right. Secondly, it tends to be a little hot out here in September,
Yeah.
so letting stuff pile up.
In fact, they'll even stop it for a couple of days if it's too hot. They'll be like, "Nope, no beats today."
Yeah. So out here, the prevalent equipment that you see out here are, you obviously have pull type stuff. So you're looking at like Amity, beet diggers. You got defoliators. You got
Some older Artsway
stuff like that. So, sugar beets typically have, you got two passes. That basically when you have a defoliation pass, knocking down the tops off of the beets, and you come back in and you with a digger and you dig them up, pop them out of the ground, and then you have a beet cart someplace that you dump the beets into, that then get transferred to typically a live bottom or a side dump or something like that, bottom dump type of scenario on the sugar beets, and then they go to the factory. And
or you drive trucks through the field and go from the digger right into the truck.
Right. Yeah. The other side of that is there's a couple different manufacturers have popped up out here. You have the self-propelled sugar beet harvesters, which do everything in one pass: the defoliation, the digging, they have a hopper, and they dump right into it.
Just in case you thought combines were expensive, they make self-propelled beet diggers.
Right. And you can only do one thing with them.
Right. You can't even change row spacings under a week.
Yeah. So you got that. So we have Ropas and what's the other one? That's Homer. That's right. That's been out here running around, and both of those are very unique machines, European built machines.
I'm a half a mile from a Homer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and both of those are machines that are ultra niched, right? Like we talked about. All you're doing with that is digging sugar beets. You're not doing anything else with it. Typically, those are $1 million to $1.5 million for something like that. They're a very impressive machine. They are the way they look like, but you can do. I think the last time I really thought about it, that displaces about 4 tractors in a typical sugar beet scenario. You'll have the defoliation, a tractor on a defoliator, a tractor on a digger, a tractor on a beet cart.
Yeah, but most Ropas have a cart with them just to keep it running.
Right. So you're displacing 3 tractors, roughly, right, to do that, right?
3 tractors and 2 guys.
Right. So from a used equipment perspective, when you're looking at something like that, that has a whole different spin on it and what you're looking at, because a lot of stuff that we do here goes back to Michigan, right? You see a lot of stuff in Michigan, and there's some stuff over in Idaho, and there's some stuff in Washington. There's some stuff in southern Canada that where sugar beets are a little prevalent, but it's such a niche marketplace that it is. You could very easily have 50% of the market when you have 2 Ropas sitting on your lot. Right. It's just like, it's that niche, just that few machines come out every year. And it's just one of those things when you're looking at that, it has a different dynamic when you're going through the process of evaluating that machine for what the quote unquote market is.
Right. For sure. We in the early days of Ropa in America, we experienced that.
We did.
Oh, there's one used one in America. Here it is.
Yeah. We have the other one. And
and the phone rings off the hook. Not to buy it. What is that?
Yeah, what is that? Exactly. Yeah. So as you work your way through that, the process of that used equipment space dramatically different. Whether you're talking pull type stuff or self-propelled stuff, all those things have a different thing. Now let's move over and talk a little bit about what you see on the edible bean side. So big crop out here for us, pinto beans, kidney beans, northerns. I mean, all that stuff. Like
those are the main 3 for sure.
If you're enjoying refried beans at your home, maybe a good opportunity that those came from Western Nebraska.
Very good chance, because we are actually, I think we are the chief pinto region.
Is that right? Okay.
Out of the dry bean regions of the country, I think we're the main pinto spot.
So again, you go back and start looking at those things, and you've got so Pickett was a big
right.
a big producer of that stuff. And
Harrison.
you had a Pickett combine, and the Pickett combine was basically it's a pull type combine you hook to a tractor in it, and it does just strictly for bean harvest, edible bean harvest. No do anything else with that either. But it's a very expensive machine. I haven't priced one of those in probably, I guess, 8 years since I priced one of those. So I wouldn't even begin to.
Late model used is probably quarter mil.
So a new one's probably 350-ish, 325, something like that. And you have Pickett bean heads, and those are all.
But the reason for using a Pickett combine is they are a very special, like, twin rotor system. And if you have a lot of weeds in your edible beans, because keep in mind, there is zero GMO-ness to edible beans.
Right.
They're literally take them out of the bag and plant them in the ground. That's what they are. So there's very little you can do except mechanical control, cultivating that kind of stuff with beans, which is part of the reason they always undercut them and did the picket and that kind of stuff, is to dry the weeds out so you're not taking green weeds in.
Yep.
Nightshade berries is the predominant reason that a Pickett combine has ever existed, because allegedly, your favorite word, that Pickett combine can go harvest beans and with mature nightshade berries in them, thresh the beans, not squish the berries, and get them out.
Yeah.
Because once that berry is squished, you got stain on the beans and you got weird livestock feed then.
Yep. So when you're looking at that, you have Pickett heads, like for your combine, and those kind of things. So like you said, you undercut all that stuff, you windrow them, and you have pickup heads that you do that you're doing those things with. So there's a multitude of ways of doing that, right? Millet is, if you have bird seed outside your house, you've got millet, right? That's what that is, right? So you got that sitting out there. Again, another good feedstock. You see a lot of people do that. It's you do it the same way you would do any other crop with it's got a fairly big stock. You get a row head that you're going down the way with, direct cut, those kind of things all come into play with that as well. Final cutting of alfalfa. So this is the time of year when you start seeing guys looking at what the price of hay's been, what they've done so far, and they start making some decisions about, hey, do I need a new big square baler next year? Am I going to look at a new windrower? Am I going to add a windrower? Steamers are getting to be a big deal out here. You're starting to see a lot more steamers with machines as things pop up. So a lot of niches that come into play with that. So the whole point of this that we're laying out here is that when you look at how these things come together and the opportunities that present themselves, this is a different time of the year for used equipment, because so much of the equipment that we look at this time of the year, especially in the area that we're at, is very niched.
Yeah.
We still have combines, we still have, corn heads and platform heads and grain carts and those kind of things too coming through. But this time of the year, as you look at that niche group of equipment that comes through, this is the stuff that comes in that very well could sit on your lot for 6-9 months, a year and a half before the next season comes up. So you have to be very conscious about what you're doing when you're looking through that stuff. So Aaron, as you're looking at these machines come through and you're looking at how the used equipment market is playing out on these particular pieces, what are a couple rules of thumb that you use when you're doing that?
Aged isn't necessarily aged.
Right, exactly. You're right. Something's been there for a year. You're like, man, it's not been here that long.
Right. Pick it up and move it to a different spot. Hey, look at that. We rotated stock.
Right.
And honestly, that is your old school bean stuff is, pretty much is what it is, as far as what I'm my biggest thing with keeping machinery moving is lot rot.
Right.
You can have a climate controlled building full of sound guards that have been gone through front to back, and if you don't go start them for a year, half of them will be dead, something won't work, lot rot. On the sugar beet equipment, that's the beauty of it. That's virtually non-existent. Okay? You do have, on most diggers, you have your belted chain, but that is pretty good about weather. Because keep in mind, most pull type beet diggers sit outside.
Yeah.
Very rarely is that thing ever in a shed,
Right.
because if you're unfamiliar with beet diggers, it is a half a day to hook it up and move
Right.
it somewhere.
Right.
It's not for the faint of heart to, oh, we're gonna move that over there. That doesn't happen.
No.
Hence
No.
the High Plains video in the weeds.
Yeah.
But no, beet diggers, I mean, seriously, I would say, now let me back up a second. In that specialty crop equipment, it's more of a rule of thumb of, oh, we're upgrading because this is bigger, or we're upgrading because we have to. Okay.
Right.
There's a lot of, that's a world where a bigger percentage of your trades are past their life, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Past their usable life.
Right.
We'll use that term.
Well, just real quick on that. I mean, if you think about the number of guys that have switched from 4-row to 6-row,
yeah.
I think that they make an 8-row now. or
Yeah.
something like-
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a producer here that I deal with a while back, and we were kind of talking about his lifespan through big sugar beet harvester. His life from the time he started to where he's at now, and they run multiple
Right.
ropas and the whole thing. And he goes, we went from a 2-row, and then I realized that we get done a little bit faster at a 4-row, and then I realized I get done even faster at a 6-row, and 10 years into it, I had an 8-row or whatever, and then I finally made the switch to the ropa. And sugar beets, that process of harvest is not a fast process.
No.
It's a very much a grind, and it's a very slow grind. And because you're digging footballs out of the ground,
Right.
and you're doing it, and they're whatever 6 to 12 inches into the ground, right? And you're pulling those things up out of the ground, and you're going 2 miles an hour or whatever it is that you're going to the field to do that. So it's not like you're making an incredible, at the end of the day, you look like, man, we really knocked it out of the park with our 4 passes. You know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You
You're
know?
not picking corn at 6 mile an hour
No.
with a 12-row head. And
Exactly. Yeah. So, but anyway, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
But that's real quick to your point. That's where the ropa shines.
Right.
Both at once. It's just that much more efficient.
Yep.
But no, diggers, they sit outside. Defoliators often sit outside. What's there on a defoliator? Tires, and you have your tarp covers, if you will.
It's a glorified batwing mower, dude. It's really what it is.
Yeah,
That's
what it is.
That's what it is.
So really, and unless it is one of those, if it's one of those items and you're on the fence about it, don't be. Just get out the blue wrench and
Right.
send her down the road.
Mhm.
Call the scrapper. Otherwise, it can just kind of be the thing where I've seen where 3 guys are on the same digger, nobody buys it because, they all 3 decide, one more year, like say they're a 4-0 and they're going to a 6. That's probably the biggest jump that I was involved in, 10, 15 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. Whereas now the jump to 8 isn't near as much as it was, because 4 and 6 is the same planter.
Yep.
8 isn't. And beets, guess rows are real.
Right. Yeah.
You don't lean that stalk into the cornhead snoot, you
Right.
cut half the beet off in the ground. But to that point, then on the bean side, if you have, pickets around or that kind of thing, I think the picket one step itself is a far more, it's probably the one specialty thing that, to me, you got to get out of there.
Yeah.
It just seems like with that great big belt on the back, those belts can deteriorate a lot faster than like a combine draper or, the belted chain on a digger or the tops on a defoliator. It's just kind of its own little animal. But there's still, that's a thing that's also with direct cut becoming very, very prevalent. That's a machine that in and of itself is kind of sunsetting to a point.
Yeah. Yep. You're seeing, again, back to your point with the direct cut, you're seeing a lot of guys that are using platform heads, draper heads, those kind of things that are trying to do a direct cut into the bean.
And most are successfully.
Yeah. Yep. So you're starting to see a series of equipment that's kind of starting to be quote unquote old school, and they're going to. Another thing too is some of these crops is that, you know, out in our area there you'll have, it's not just a crop, you know, it's not corn and beans. It's, you know, it's corn, edible beans, sugar beets, alfalfa. You know, you millet, you start wheat. You know, you got guys that might have 7 different crops. You know, they might run 7 different crops, and then on top of that, they got cows on top of all that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So as you're watching these things roll through, the big play into this specialty thing is row spacing, because you're going to use one planter to plant all those crops. Right. Now you're going to drill your millet and those kind of things, but if you're looking at edible beans, corn, and sugar beets, you're going to use a planter of some kind to do that. So that's the other thing that comes into that. There are sugar beets typically have a better are better planted at 20-inch rows than 30-inch rows. I don't know why that is, but typically it's how it is. Whereas there's more 20-inch corn moving into our area, I think, because of that.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely that. Anything other than 30-inch corn in our country is 100% driven by the beets.
By beets, yeah. And so when you're looking at the spacing and what you're doing with that, you're planting all that stuff with one planter, and again, you got to manage that stuff as it rolls through. So as you're watching these things come through, you know, 22-inch rows were a big deal for a long time out here. When I first moved out here 15 years ago, it was 22-inch rows were a lot more prevalent than what they are today.
Well, to your point, when I first got to Alliance 20 years ago or whatever, there were several guys that had 2 planters. They had a 22 that was the beet and bean planter, and then they had a 30 for corn.
Yeah.
And then they had different tractors.
Right.
You know, we have this 8300 with skinny tires set this way, and we have this 8300 on normal. And I mean, they had almost like 2 lines of machinery.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the instance that you saw as those things set together that really sets the tone for what planters look like as well. So
right.
When you're looking at where things are playing out, you're seeing a movement from, I don't know if there's much 22-inch stuff out here at all anymore. I haven't seen it for a long time.
They're 1 or 2, I think, probably.
But for the most part, you're either on 20-inch rows or 30-inch rows, and that's kind of where you're at. And it really depends on what you're doing, and what your crop mix looks like. But again, the specialty stuff has, again, so niched that you're trying to figure out, okay, well, I want to do this, but I need these row spacings to make it work. And not that there aren't 30-inch rows out here on sugar beets, because there's plenty of that, but it's just, if there's a lot more, that 20-inch stuff is starting to be kind of slowly make its way through.
Yeah. It's coming on hot for sure.
Yeah.
And not just here. I mean, that's a thing across the country.
Across the country, yeah. That's
corn and bean guys in the I-States going to 20.
Yeah.
You know, there's been non-sugar beet corn and bean guys in the Dakotas that have been 20 for ages, because they were all over because of beets. So, hey, let's do this.
Yeah. So now let's talk a little bit about, hay. We start looking at alfalfa hay, final cutting for that. As you look through that time frame, 2 things pop out to me. This is the time of year where you definitely get 3 to 4 cuttings a year. Every once in a great while, you might get that 5th one, but for the most part, you're going to get 3 for sure, possibly 4, and you're done.
That usually takes a hot May and a hot October.
Right. Exactly. So as you're walking your way through that, you start seeing guys start making decisions right now. Start thinking about, okay, next year I'm going to get a big square baler, update my big square baler, add or update a swather. I started going through those things. I watched a video the other day on one of the social media sites, I think it might have been Facebook, that, there's a guy with in a circle going 17.5 miles an hour, with the Pivot Pro on there. So he's just, he's not driving it. It's just going like that. And so the efficiencies of those machines are starting to really pick up. You're starting to see more and more of that. From the specialty standpoint, you're seeing a lot of steamers make their way into the high plains. So from like here west, like all the way west to the ocean. But you're seeing, because of the dew points are so low, that in order to get a good pack and a good life of the hay there, you'll see these big, huge steamers that are, as the hay's coming through the baler, it's pumping steam in there to where that you get a good mixture of moisture into those, because it's so dry. You get a good mixture of moisture into there.
Yep.
What level of, I mean, I know this is something we've seen pop up out here in like the last 3 to 5 years, and it's getting to be more and more prevalent now as you look out there. But as you're looking at this stuff, Aaron, where do you see that market? Like, what are you seeing with that market right now? What experience have you had with that?
Oh, that's a tough question, Mr. Seymour. It's so new.
Hard hitters. That's all you have here. Hard hitting questions.
I know. It's so new and so niche. Not much.
And they're expensive.
They are expensive. They are very expensive.
$250,000, $300,000 or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, if you're putting up high quality dairy alfalfa or horse hay, whatever, it's worth its weight in gold. But it is there's niche and then there's that.
Right.
That's not like a special rake. It's its own unique,
it's its own deal.
Animal.
Right. Yeah.
It is a thing that most parts, or I shouldn't say most, because most is here. It is a thing in other parts of the country they find flabbergasting.
Right.
Why would you add moisture to a windrow? You know?
Yeah.
You get, let's say,
250 miles east of here.
Yeah, I was going to say 200 miles east of here, all the way to the Atlantic, and they would lose their mind with that thing.
Yeah.
But ironically enough, I did talk to a guy in Iowa that has one, so they're around.
Yeah.
They're just so niche. They're kind of one of those things. They're not. I have a big square baler for my hay. That guy's not going to have one.
Right. More often than not.
It's the commercial guy, the guy who is an alfalfa, commercial, sells alfalfa.
Yeah.
Not self-consumption, but he is an alfalfa producer because he sells every bale off that yard.
15,
those guys.
15 pivots of
right,
alfalfa.
Yeah. That's what they do. They raise alfalfa.
Right.
Those guys is who has it. The problem is we've had one used one, as I recall, and it was like a 1-year-old. The guy changed size or something, one of those goofy, long ways from worn out type of deal. But somebody else bought it because it was a little cheaper than a new one. But that's my experience. In talking to fellow dealers and stuff across the West where those exist, everybody else is kind of in the same boat too. It's kind of like, when you need it, it's the greatest thing on earth, but otherwise you answer a lot of questions and get a lot of and walk away. It's its own animal, man.
Yep. So last thing that we have this time of year that I would consider to be a niche thing is forage harvesters, right? Forage harvesting, right? So you got earlage,
shoppers, baby, shoppers.
You got earlage, you got silage. Those two things are going to be happening here real quick. So as you're watching those things roll through, so earlage is a unique, to say the best way, a unique way where as you're going through the field, you're only taking off the ear and running it through the chopper, and not any of the green actual crop part of the stem part.
Look, about every other plant, the top half will come in.
That's right. Yeah. Whereas on the silage side, you've got a zombie destroyer in the front of that sits about 6 inches off the ground, and you can always tell a field that's been cut by a chopper from a long, long ways away.
Oh yeah.
Everything is exactly the same height, and it's about 6 inches or so off the ground, and the entire machine runs through there.
And there's always one spot where 12 stalks that are 10 foot high are just leaning down.
Right.
Because they stopped, they saw something, and then they backed up quick, and then they
went around it. Yeah. So
just a bare field. And then there's every silage field has like, we either had to skip or there was something laying there.
Yeah. So that machine, I'll forever put choppers in a specialty category.
Oh,
I mean,
for sure.
they might not be as specialized as a Ropa, but I mean, basically they are. I mean, you're doing two things with it. You're running material through it, and it's coming out smaller than it went in.
Absolute destruction
at Mach 1 when it comes out the backside, right?
Yeah,
and that's the as it comes out of the spout. So as you're watching those things roll through, choppers are always something I had a lot more respect for choppers than I ever did for combines. And I think the reason for that was combines, there were just so damn many of them, right? And everybody had one. And it was just, the market totally hinged on what happened with the combine market. When you look at a chopper, the chopper market to me was always the best possible time to sell a chopper was the worst possible conditions on planet when you had a drought. Right. That's when the phone rang the most for a chopper. And then when you had the best possible crop conditions on the planet, you're going to get bumper crops. That was the worst possible time to sell a chopper.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things in the mix where that equilibrium that you're trying to find on the chopper side was so driven. If there's anything that's changed over the course of the last 5 years to where it's more, you look at combines and the number of custom cutters on true combine, wheat, corn, soybeans, like those kind of guys, you're starting to see that start to fade a little bit. But on the custom cutter side of the chopper side, it feels like that side of the business is growing leaps and bounds, right?
Yeah.
And it comes back down to I can justify my own combine. I can't justify my own chopper.
Well, and you know what's funny? The people that can justify their own choppers, the ones who don't.
Right.
Those your mega dairies, they don't own a chopper.
No, they get that.
The mega feedlot, that's the last thing they want around. They might have an 8800,
right,
that they can hop out and help with, but no, and that's why they used to have 1, 2, 3 of their own. Now they call a guy. They probably got a couple packing tractors to help or whatever because they're a feedlot, a dairy. They got them anyway.
Right.
But yeah. It's kind of the opposite. The bigger a farm gets, everything's our own.
Right.
The bigger in livestock you get, you hire it.
Right. And another thing too on this, especially on the chopper side of it, is that they're very parts heavy. Right. I mean, the maintenance on the chopper is something that is unique to choppers only. Right. I mean, for as ground engaging as a Ropa is, and a Amity beet cart beet digger, even those don't burn through parts as fast as a chopper does. You know what I mean?
No.
So it's one of those machines where I get why people hire it out, because is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Is the amount of parts the money I'm going to spend on parts outweigh what it costs me just to have someone come do it? All those things come into play. So when you're looking at the chopper business, to me, I've always looked at choppers and say, hey, this is something that you really have to pay. You really have to be on your game when you're looking at choppers.
Yes.
And really understand what the dynamics of the marketplace are right now, right? Because, I mean, I worked for a company one time that would sell, anywhere between 15 and 22 new choppers every year. And there were guys that would go out and they had a customer that would get, I can't remember, 5 or 6, but they put 1,000 hours a year on all of them.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then they would turn them back in, and, of course, and that's when you start looking at mix makes a big difference there. Which you think it would make a big difference in choppers, but to be honest with you, when you look at, do I get like a 9400 or 9500, 9600 choppers? There's niched back to like Pennsylvania, right? That Northeast, right?
Yep.
But once you start getting outside of the Northeast and like the upper Ohio River Valley, upper Atlantic, Mid-Atlantic, and those kind of areas, it quickly goes back to 9900s pretty quick.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yep.
Like that 98, 9900 pretty fast. And, 980s, 990s, 970, Jaguars and those kind of things. So as you're watching those things roll through,
Ford Cruiser 980.
Right. Whereas like on a combine, if you compare it to what the combine marketplace is, again, Northeast, very, class 6, class 7 combines up there, even some class 5 combines and stuff like that. But you still see a lot of 780s running around, class 8 combines running around in the Northeast, right? You still see 780 combines running all the way through the mid-Atlantic, all the way down into Georgia and North Florida. And then you go all the way across the spectrum. Again, a ton of class 8 combines running around. That niche marketplace is very, what's the best one I'm looking for? I mean, it's very cauterized, I guess, for lack of a better term, into those little spectrums where you see smaller is what we need up here, bigger is what we need everywhere else. And I think that makes a big difference.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, certainly. I know, on the used side of things, I get really excited when we get a chopper in that's a 7 or smaller, because I know I can sell it right away.
Right.
That is the rig that is still very popular and I'm not going to say easy, far less challenging to sell, because those still go to owner operator.
Right.
Two things I love about the chopper business. One being, you had better have pulled shields and looked at what you got, or you're going to be sitting there, not know what to do with your hands by the second question on the phone.
Right.
Which brings me to my first thing. Talking to a chopper customer, guy who buys a self-propelled chopper in today's world, if you can answer every one of his questions about what kind of condition that machine is in, great job. You did your part.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
there's guys have been custom harvesters for 50 years, but that chopper guy knows the thickness of every piece of metal on there. Yeah. Well, that's only, that's 6 gauge there and that's over there, and every little thing, because that is the life.
Yeah. Yep. They're the most educated person that you're going to run into on a singular piece of equipment.
Right. They're also the guys. Now, most harvesters rebuild their own machines in the winter if they don't roll them or whatever, too. That chopper guy might do it 3 times through the year.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of big parts that get
pushed. He can bring his little parts box out there in the back of the service truck and start ripping shields and change that thing out in the field in an hour, and we are blowing coal again, man.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
It is so impressive.
Very, very impressive. All right, man. Good place to stop. Folks, I want to reach out to you, get more information about your CEO job over there at High Plains Wholesale. What's the best way to do that?
Well, you can catch a lot of good deals on High Plains Wholesale Equipment on TikTok and Facebook. You can follow me on Facebook or Twitter, Aaron Fintel, or X, whatever it's called. I share the same deals there as the High Plains Wholesale. You can call me or text me, 308-760-1193, or shoot me an email, afintel@21equip.com.
Yep, and you can find me, Casey Seymour, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, X, TikTok, wherever, at Moving Iron Podcast or Moving Iron LLC, either one. You can watch the video version of this over at Farm Journal's YouTube channel, and you can also hear the audio version of this on AgWeb underneath podcast. You can find it there, and you can see all the stuff there. Got a couple things coming up. We have the Moving Iron Summit. That's coming up September 24th through the 25th. 24th through 26th in Austin, Texas. If you're interested in that, if you're dealer interested in that, by all means, a great place to come and network. Aaron, you've been to all of them. It's a great place to meet new people, put faces with names, and also pick up a thing or two about what might be happening in the overall marketplace. If you're interested in that, go to AgWeb, click on the events tab, and you'll be able to see what's going on as far as agenda and those kind of things. You'll be able to see all that there. Also, Greg Peterson and I will be at Yield Academy, which I've never been to a Yield Academy of any kind in Spokes, so this will be exciting news. And so that's August 21st. We'll have a little Q&A. If you guys are in the area, stop by Rochester, Minnesota. You can hear the results from the crop tour, as well as ask some questions about what we see happening in the marketplace. So check us out there. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour with Aaron Finnell, Greg Machinery, Pete Peterson, and Rich Possum. Let's move some iron, folks. out.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week. And remember, Moving Iron is available on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere podcasts are found. So until next time, let's move some iron.